in the US alone, there are over 100 million caregivers. These are adults that are taking care of maybe their elderly parents or their spouse or their children. And even though this is so common, what I hear again and again is how overwhelming it can feel and oftentimes lonely. And so it's so important for us to have conversations about caregiving. And that's what we're going to do today, to talk about the emotional journey of being a caregiver. And I am pinching myself. I can't even believe who I get the honor to speak to today about this topic. Before I do the formal introduction, let me just say, when I think about my childhood, one of my favorite memories is being squished on this brown couch in our little TV room, laughing out loud at the Police Academy movies. We had all of them on VHS, and the person I'm going to speak to really feels like he defined my childhood in a way with his movies, and it's amazing to have him here. Let me welcome Steve Guttenberg. Thank you, Steve, so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks, Jessica. I'm so excited to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we talked really quickly before starting the recording, and I shared with you that we have just finished a whole series for caregivers because it was our most requested. So many people are caregivers. And even though, the irony is that it's so common, but it does feel really lonely when you're going through it. And it really makes you stop. And it's shocking to your system to see somebody that you love need that care. And so I'd love to just to start to hear a bit about your journey as a caregiver.
Well, you're so right. There are 100 million caregivers in this country. And the Rosalind Carter Caregivers Institute talks about there's basically just a few people. Either you're going to need caregiving or you are a caregiver. And it's a very, as you said, a very lonely occupation. What happened to me was that my dad had renal failure, kidney failure, and slowly it started to creep up. We got news of it maybe 15 years ago, but we didn't go to a nephrologist, a kidney doctor. And then when it got to the point that my dad needed dialysis, that's when it got scary. So my dad was a very tough guy, U.S. Army Ranger. He was a New York City policeman, plain clothes and uniformed, very tough guy, could do a handstand for 25 minutes, no problem. All of a sudden, started to weaken, and we started to go on dialysis. And that's when my dad needed caregiving. And it was a shock, as you say, to know someone who has been so strong throughout your whole life, helped me put on my pajamas when I was a little boy, helped me brush my teeth, taught me how to shave. Then later on, I realized I had to help my father shave. I had to help my father put his pajamas on. I had to help my father brush his teeth. And it's really a shock to the system, especially if you love someone so much.
And even though we know that eventually time passes and people get older, no matter what, it's a shock. There's a moment in your book where you talked about how you always were a planner and you were really good at planning for your future, and still having this hero need this help. It's something that you can't ever really plan for. And I'm curious, looking back now with this new perspective, if you're speaking to somebody who's in that state, what advice would you give them or encouragement you would give them as they start that journey?
I would first say be easy on yourself and let yourself feel how you're going to feel. There is no playbook on how you're supposed to feel as a caregiver. And you have to give yourself a break, because sometimes you're going to cry and you have to walk out of the room because it's so upsetting. Sometimes you're going to have to do things which you never thought you'd have to do. Things that are personal to that person. And that person, because they're ill, can't do those personal things. And you'll have to do that with them or for them. Then there's times when you have to keep hold of your patience and really work on your patience. When someone who's ill can't do something, or they're in a bad mood, or they're in some sort of mental state where you have to hold on to yourself. One night my dad was up, my dad couldn't sleep so much toward the end, and he would moan almost all night. And we were up all night with him. And one time I grabbed my father and I lost my patience. And I said, Dad, you've got to go to sleep. You've got to go to sleep. And he was holding on to the hospital bed, which we had at home. And he looked up at me and said, you're very aggressive. And I went, oh, sorry, Dad. I haven't slept in about 25 days. He goes, all right, I just want you to know you're a little aggressive. But you have to expect the unexpected.
We created a tapping meditation for guilt because we heard that come up again and again. And it's so hard because you're in this position that there's no winning, right? Like it's so easy to feel like you're not doing it right, because what are you measuring yourself against? You're kind of facing the unknown every single day and just hoping that you can do the best you can. And so I love that self-forgiveness, because it's very hard to know, like, am I doing the right thing when everything is so unknown? And that grace is just so important.
Yeah, because there is very few rules. There are very few rules. It's really, you come in every morning and play it by ear, but you must go way deep inside into your integrity, into your character, into what's right. And that will tell you what to do at that moment. No, they don't want to eat at 10 o'clock. They want to have breakfast at 1 o'clock. You try to convince them that you need to get nourishment early. And if they don't want it, you let it go and you wait. Now, by the way, as a caregiver, you usually eat when they eat. You sleep when they sleep. So you have to get used to a different type of performance level in yourself. I didn't work out for 4 years because I had to get up early and sometimes get the dialysis machine ready. I had to get things ready from Dad when he woke up to get him situated, change his clothes, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to put a lot of yourself aside, but at the same time, somehow you've got to catch up, and I wasn't good at that. Catch up on yourself, be it the dentist, the haircut, your own sleep, your own nourishment. Sometimes you have to do that. And it's really tough because you're focused on them.
Yeah. Did you feel like at the end, as you were going through this, that it almost felt like a thank you to your father? I mean, reading the book and what he's done for you, seeing you support him in that way, I could see the heartbreak, and I could also see maybe the pride of just or like the gratitude of being able to, think about those memories in the past and bring them to the present and kind of be there from this grateful place.
Yeah, it really helped actually to think of the good times when my dad was really, really strong. And I do believe in reciprocal life. When someone invites you to their house, you're supposed to invite them to your house. When someone does something for you, you always have to look for some way to do something for them. And when a parent or a loved one takes care of you when you're young, if you are of that mind, and not everybody is, there's no judgment on that. But if you are of the mind, it's a wonderful feeling to give back to them. Dad, I'll take care of you. Don't worry. And when they open their eyes in the morning and they look and they see you, there you are. What a relief it is. What a relief it is to look in those loving eyes and they know everything's okay. They're watching me. It's It's magical. It's intangible. It's eternal. It's forever.
It makes me reflect on how showing up is enough. When we have so much judgment on whether we're doing it right or we're showing up in the right way, I think that
Yes.
concept of like showing up is enough. We're there and they
Yes.
see us.
My dad would always say, showing up is 80% of it. When someone invites you to a party, go. You don't have to be the most interesting person there. You don't have to be the smartest, the funniest. But by showing up, that will make them feel really good. And later on, in weeks and months and years, they'll think of that and feel so good that you took the time to show up. So the fact is, you don't have to be perfect. Just be there. Just be there when they call out, Steven, I'm right here, Dad. Oh, I didn't know where you were. No, I'm right here, Dad. What do you want? Maybe some ice. Sure, Dad. Here's some ice. It's just exactly, Jessica, you're so right. Just show up. Just be there. You don't have to stay, you go to somebody's house, you don't have to stay for the party, the whole party. If you have to leave, you leave. But just by coming, that's what life is about. It's about caring. It's about caring enough to make the effort. My father would always say to me, we're in the effort business. That's what we do. You have a friend who lives across town, make the effort to go see him. Make an effort to make a phone call. Make an effort to study. Make an effort to do your job. That's what we do. We have to put out the effort. And then the universe and God has a way of helping you out too, putting some wind to your back.
Absolutely. I keep referring to these stories. I haven't mentioned yet that I've been reading your book called Time to Think, a caregiving for my hero. And Steve, you are an incredible writer, first off.
Oh, thank you.
Incredible.
Oh, really? Wow.
I always like to finish every book before I interview anyone on it. And I started reading it being like, okay, I have to get through this because I have this interview coming up. And I couldn't. I just wanted to slow down and savor the words.
Really?
And it's so beautifully written, and it's impossible to read it and not reflect on your own life and to look back and see how dots connect. You didn't know it at the time, why things were a certain way, but then you look back and you see the divinity in your past and the people that have gone through your life. It's beautifully written. And I would love for you to share a story about your father. And I'm gonna request one. I would like to request the story of your father deciding that he was going to practice a stunt in a movie before you did.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's funny. I was doing a pilot called The Ferret with the great director Blake Edwards. And Blake Edwards directed all the Pink Panthers and Breakfast at Tiffany. And his wife was Julie Andrews. My dad was a big Julie Andrews fan. And my dad said, I want to come out and watch you do this pilot. I said, okay. So I was shooting the pilot, and we were doing a night scene. And in this pilot, I played the son of a great spy, and I was going to be a spy myself. And there was a part where I'm supposed to jump off a 30-foot tall building. And actually, they had a stuntman do it. And my dad was there that night, and he loved Hollywood, and he loved to support me. He loved to be on a movie set. He was enthralled by the track that was laid for a camera so that the camera can pan by. He was enthralled by the craft service table, which had all kinds of food on it at any time of day and night. It was about 3 a.m. And my dad was talking to the director, Blake Edwards, and was telling him that he was an airborne ranger. He was a policeman, and, he loved danger and things like that, and loved the outside world. And Blake Edwards looks up to the building and turns to my dad and says, we've got a stunt man who's going to do the stunt for you. Do you want to do it? And my dad said, yeah. He said, can you jump from 30 feet? He goes, I'm an airborne ranger. I've jumped from thousands of feet. He said, okay. So to Joe Dunn, who was the stunt coordinator, hooked my dad up to a rig. And as he got up there, a big Rolls Royce pulls up, and out comes Julie Andrews. And she gave a kiss to her husband, who told her what was going on. She looked up there and she said, "Hello, Mr. Guttenberg." And my father said, "Hello, Miss Andrews." And she asked if he was going to do the jump, and he said, "Absolutely." And my father was so excited, and he jumped. My dad said it was more like 50 feet. And the rig slowed him down, and he hit the stunt pillow, and he got off, and everyone clapped. And Julie Andrews came over to him and gave him a big kiss. So my dad was just so excited that he met Julie Andrews, and Julie Andrews saw him do that jump.
I loved that story. And, as you're intertwining the story of being a caregiver with memories of your childhood, with memories from Hollywood and these major movies, I couldn't help to see how you navigating Hollywood, the impact your father had on your ability to not get lost in that world and stay grounded. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, my dad is a very pragmatic, in my mind, of course, he's passed, but was always a pragmatic guy. He always said to me, "Steven, show business is a beautiful pair of scissors. It's laden with jewelry and diamonds and emeralds, but it can also cut you. So you have to be very, very careful of it." He said, "It's a job. And at any time, if you don't like it, you can take your marbles and come home." And he was really very down to earth. I'll never forget, I was the king of Bacchus one time, which is the biggest parade in New Orleans during Mardi Gras. And the parade was going down the block with 1 million people lining the block. And we got to the Superdome, and we went inside the Superdome, and there were 100,000 people in tuxedos. And I'm on this 100-foot scaffold, and people are screaming and yelling. And my friend Jill Siegel turns to my father and says, "Stanley, look at your son. Look at your son up there. The 100,000 people are screaming his name." And my father said, "It's nice, but I could be back at the hotel watching television." And my father never took too much to heart. My father always had a very down-to-earth feeling about show business. As much as he loved it and he was excited by it, he knew the inherent dangers that mentally and physically, but mentally, that show business can create. So he always just told me, just take it nice and easy. You know, as take the highs easily, take the lows easily. Don't take everything to heart. Just don't take everything to heart. Everything will work out. And as bad as it is when it's bad, as unfair as it is when it's bad, that's how unfair it is when it's good. Just take it nice and easy. Everything will be okay.
I think that's advice to live by, whether you're in Hollywood or not,
Yeah.
of just staying grounded and that gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gratitude. My dad was always thankful for his first breath of air in the morning, a cup of coffee. My dad was thankful for when the car started. My dad was thankful for his wife, his family. My dad never went out with the boys at night. He was so grateful and thankful to come home. He just wanted to be home, and every night he told us at the dinner table how thankful he was for this beautiful family he had.
That's such an important message. Your movies, it could make me cry. When you reached out to us, it was like my brothers and I were kids again, and we were just like, "Oh my God." Do you remember when we would quote, like, and we used to play Police Academy, and we had these walkie-talkies that were broken, so we would just yell really loud through it for the other person in the other room to hear. And so we were just so giddy to have you reach out, and then to hear you say such wonderful things about the app and about tapping, and if you would be willing to share, I would love to hear about how you were introduced to tapping, kind of your
Sure.
experience around it.
Sure. Well, my friend Jill Siegel, who I just spoke about, her son is a great guy named Jason Siegel, who's a wonderful actor, but more than that, a really terrific person. He and I, his family and I, lived about 3 doors from each other, and we know each other for almost 40 years. And I was at Jason's bar mitzvah, and so I know him a long time. And I was telling Jill about a certain anxiety that I was having. And she said that Jason told her that I should try tapping, that it really is a wonderful way of life and a great tool to deal with so many things that happen in life. So I immediately went on to the app, and I was introduced to you and Nick and your brother and everyone at the Tap Solution. And I found myself really becoming a better person because of tapping. I learned to deal with certain things through osmosis. It's been really interesting. Lately, I've been tapping into the micro boost of courage, the micro boost of happiness, because I've been pretty busy. And then there are times when then I deal with the 21-day program and all kinds of different methods that the tapping creates. And I'm amazed and awesomely thankful for what you provided. It's a way to deal with things in a very hands-on method, that you have tools at your side to deal with things. It's so interesting that the tapping creates something that during the day, when I do it, it brings me back to my center and I'm okay. And I'm so grateful to you and your brothers and your family and everyone in your company that makes this possible. It's an incredible tool. And everybody I meet, I tell about tapping, what a wonderful app it is and what a difference it makes. And it's kind of magical. Just do it. Just show up. Show up and do it. And before you know it, it becomes a good part of your life. There's nothing that creates an addiction. There's nothing that creates an unhealthy want. It's an exercise. I'm a big exercise guy. I love to go to the gym. I love to do my yoga. I love to stretch. I love to lift weights. This is part of my mental yoga, my mental workout, my soulful workout. And I got to tell you, your daily inspirations have helped me enormously. I listen to them every day, and I think about them, and I listen to them several times a day. And it's amazing what a difference in my life they have made. And I can't wait to meet you guys in person and be around you, because I think that you're all really special people to have done this. But it's made a big difference in my life, a big difference.
Steve, that means I'm speechless. That means so much to us. Thank you so much for just all those kind words, and also for sharing it, for having an experience and sharing it with others. It really means so much. And I am so grateful that our paths crossed, because, this book, and I have to get back to this, and I say it sincerely, is so moving. Your father is so proud, and I feel honored to get to know your father. I've been a fan of yours, but I feel like this gave me an opportunity to just really become a Stanley fan.
Aww.
And his wisdom. And like I said in the beginning, caregiving is really a lonely experience, even though so many of us go through it. And so I think it's important to hear other people's stories, because it also invites us to reflect on our stories and what we've learned and how to show up for those that we love. I want to thank you, and I want to congratulate you for just on such a wonderful book and for spending time with us today. And I can't wait to meet you in person as well.
Me too. Thanks, Jessica. This has been great. And I have to tell everybody, keep tapping.
Thank you so much, Steve.